Hi everyone. I'm Anna. I wish to welcome you to another video produced by Parrot Learning Systems. As Dr. Clayton often said, another day yields to another story, another learning, and self-development experience and opportunity.
Hi everyone, I'm your virtual representative. I've been created by Dr. Patrick Huff. I'm looking forward to exploring a number of educational topics with you and a variety of different scholars and entrepreneurs in various scientific fields. In this short video, I reconstruct an interview between Dr. Huff and Dr. Sigmund Freud. Since Freud has long since passed away, Huff's interview is conducted via an AGI platform or application that employs the most recent version of OpenAI or Chat-3.
Background.
Let's take a minute to discuss just what ChatGPT is. ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence chatbot developed by OpenAI and launched in November 2022. It is built on top of OpenAI's GPT-3 family of large language models as an approach to transfer learning using both supervised and reinforcement learning techniques.
So, the information presented in this video has been in part artificially created. This means that Freud's comments, observations, and insights are not extracted from any known to have represented his actual thoughts and utterances. Instead, the dialogue represents only what the artificial intelligence bot generated as formed from a large language model assimilated from a collective sampling of data on Freud. Therefore, consider Huff's interview with Freud a purely contemporary academic thought experiment and exchange between an AGI chatbot and himself. What's covered? An introduction between parties. Freud's three basic human psychological elements. How they present and affect human behavior. How they present in groups. What can be deduced from these observations? The interview. Huff. How are you today? Freud. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, and you? Huff. I am fine, thanks. I am interested in exploring and better understanding your theory pertaining to the ID, ego, and superego. Freud. Okay. The three elements of the human mind. Freud. The ID, pronounced ed, the ego, and the superego represent three distinct elements in one individual. In straightforward, basic terms, the ID is the desire. The ego is the self-image, and the superego represents an individual's moral compass. All three work side by side. This is to say, they influence each other. You are a result of the three elements balancing and influencing one another. Huff. I presume that over the course of human development, these three can become unbalanced. Freud. Oh, absolutely. Especially the ID, a force of nature in its own right. Too much ID, and you become impulsive. Too much ego, you become egotistical or a narcissist. Too much superego, and you become a rigid moralist. The key to a person is the balancing of the three. More about the balance of these three elements? Huff. What can perhaps cause an unbalance between the three? Freud. Good question. There are a few possibilities. An unstable childhood is one. A traumatic experience. A medical illness or condition that impacts one's mental capabilities. The list goes on. A combination of certain factors can lead to an imbalance. What's more, a small imbalance can have severe consequences. Huff. Interesting. What would be an example of a small imbalance with severe consequences? Freud. For example, let's take an individual with a very dominant ID. As a result, the individual has no control over their animal impulses. They tend to give in to every desire they have. This can cause a person to overindulge in food, sex, money, etc. This can result in addiction, obesity, bankruptcy, etc. Which element has the highest frequency of presentation? Huff. Which of the three elements tends to have the highest frequency of becoming imbalanced? Freud. Great question. I'd say the ID. When the ID is not under control, it is very powerful. But this could vary from person to person. What about you? Which do you think is most likely to become unbalanced? Huff. I am not qualified to make such a judgment. I have only a few years of education in this area. My focus over the past 8 to 10 years has been in the area of organizational analysis and human behavior. Freud. Dr. Huff, I would argue your response is valid. Huff. Thank you. Comparing the three elements in the workplace. How would you compare the three elements in the workplace? Do they manifest differently than in a personal setting? Huff. I would argue the expressions of these elements in the workplace, community, are largely similar to those that could be observed in person-to-person settings. Freud. What would you deem to be the biggest difference? Perhaps the need to suppress the ID? To prevent the ID from acting on every impulse? A working hypothesis. Huff. I believe suppression of the ID does occur when an observed person is immersed in a community or gathering such as the workplace. The reasons for this are numerous and diverse. However, the primary obsession of the individual is to not divulge their true inner desires to others. I believe they behave this way in order to guard against someone else seizing upon those desires they wish to take full advantage. What do you think? Freud. That is very true. I believe people are much more honest in the company of their close friends and family. At work, however, people are much more likely to restrain the ID. The need to maintain a status quo to please superiors and not stand out. In this way, the workplace is actually quite detrimental to an individual's freedom of self-expression. Huff. This could be the reason smaller organizations or groups are capable of being much more creative and productive than large ones. A hypothesis could be formed that smaller groups, enterprises, or companies display traits of being more agile, competitive, and quick in development and growth when compared to large ones, given most any given field of endeavor. What do you think? Freud. Your hypothesis is valid. I would say that a smaller organization or group, where individuals are closer and have more of a sense of community, would possess stronger bonds, therefore working more smoothly and achieving their goals faster. Whereas a large organization has many more barriers between its individuals, and the work being done is often not as personalized. I would absolutely deem a smaller group to be more efficient, competitive, and quick in development. Huff. I believe evidence of this unique human characteristic can be found in the study of ancient cultures where it was discovered that small teams, 5 to 11 people, proved to be the most effective unit to be applied to almost any critical task. Such teams could be observed to have occurred in ancient workgroups and military organizations such as Roman force structuring. What do you think? Freud. I think your theory is absolutely correct. A small group of individuals with the same goal have a much higher chance of succeeding in that goal than a large one. I think it creates a better communication dynamic. A small group of individuals can have their ideas and suggestions heard and considered. A large group of individuals would have their personal ideas and opinions lost in the crowd. I think it's very apparent that many large organizations and groups are too large for their own good. I think this is quite a valid observation. How does this apply to organizational studies and leadership development? Huff. Given this, it would make sense that over the course of studying organizations, their effectiveness, makeup, and nuances, leaders of such would be educated as to these dynamics so as to put the measures into practice. Does that make sense to you? Freud. Absolutely. Okay, so what conclusions can be drawn from these insights? Freud. First, I think this is something a leader or employer, a manager or CEO, should be well aware. Second, leaders should structure their organizations in a way to take into account these factors. These aside, I think you are correct in your theory and that you have a keen eye to have noticed this. Freud continues. I don't believe these factors are considered by many leaders or taken into account. Given this, Freud argues these are important factors in building and understanding the core principles of leadership as specifically focused on constructing a successful enterprise. Thanks for watching.
The Clayton Research Consultancy, a public service corporation. Leaders in education, research, global innovation, and change.